So far, we have explored the nature of resistance, its presence throughout human history, and its neurobiological foundations. Now comes the most crucial moment of this journey, transforming this knowledge into concrete action. If you've been following us from the beginning, you already understand that resistance is not a personal flaw, but a universal force that we all face. You know it has deep neurological roots and that cultures throughout millennia have developed technologies to transcend it. But knowledge without application is just information. I'll now share a set of strategies that aren't simple productivity tips. They are profound technologies for reprogramming your relationship with resistance. These strategies are based on both the ancestral wisdom and contemporary science that we discussed in previous episodes. Before we continue, if this content is valuable to you, hit the notification bell so you don't miss the final episode of this series, where I'll reveal what exists beyond resistance when we consistently overcome it. And share this video with someone you know who is struggling to move forward with something important. You might be offering exactly the tool that person needs right now. Farsi Strategy 1. The Art of Action. Prior to motivation. The first and most powerful strategy is to understand the true relationship between action and motivation. Resistance makes us believe in a specific sequence. First we feel motivated, then we act. This is one of resistance's most subtle and effective lies. The neurological truth, as we saw in the previous episode, is that consistent motivation arises after action, not before. The brain's reward circuit releases dopamine more abundantly when we're already in motion, not before we begin. Zen masters capture this wisdom in the proverb, "Before enlightenment, chop wood and carry water. After enlightenment, chop wood and carry water." Action precedes and follows insight. Emotional state is a consequence, not a prerequisite. In practical terms, this means establishing an unwavering commitment to act regardless of emotional state. The writer who only writes when feeling inspired rarely finishes a book. The professional writer who writes every day, inspired or not, completes work after work. Recently, I spoke with an award-winning novelist who confided in me. In 30 years of career, I never woke up wanting to write. Never. My success comes entirely from the willingness to start writing without the desire to write. This is the complete inversion of the motivation narrative that prevails in our culture. We don't wait for motivation to act. We act to generate motivation. Strategy 2. The minimum irreducible technique. The second strategy directly attacks the neural mechanism of resistance. As we've seen when we contemplate large and complex projects, the amygdala, our brain's alarm center, fires signals of fear and avoidance. The neurological solution is to deactivate this alarm through drastic reduction in scale. The minimum irreducible technique involves reducing the task to something so small that it would be literally ridiculous not to do it. Not exercise for an hour, but put on your sneakers. Not write a chapter, but write a sentence. Not meditate for 30 minutes, but sit on the cushion for 1 minute. This technique seems trivial, but it's neurobiologically sophisticated. By drastically reducing the task, you bypass the amygdala's threat response. Once you've started, momentum takes over. The principle of inertia that Newton identified in the physical world also applies to human behavior. James Clear, author of Atomic Habits, has a phrase that perfectly captures this strategy. The best way to get what you want is to make it so easy that you can't say no. Apply this today. Identify the project facing the most resistance in your life right now. What's the smallest possible step you could take toward it? So small that it would be absurd to refuse? Commit to taking this microscopic step today, immediately after this video. Strategy 3. The power of rituals. The third strategy recognizes a fundamental truth about resistance. It thrives at the decision point. When each action requires a new conscious decision, each decision becomes an opportunity for resistance to intervene. Rituals eliminate the decision point. Ritual is not a question of if, but only of when. When an action becomes ritual, it passes from the control of the prefrontal cortex, which requires effort and is subject to decision fatigue, to the basal ganglia, brain structures associated with automatic behaviors. This is why virtually all great creators in history developed inflexible rituals around their work. Haruki Murakami wakes up at 4 a.m. and writes for 5 to 6 hours every day, without exception, followed by a 10-kilometer run. Maya Angelou rented a hotel room where she would work from 7 a.m. to 2 p.m. every day, even when she didn't feel like it. Stephen King sits down to write at exactly 8 a.m. and doesn't get up until he completes 2,000 words, regardless of how long it takes. These aren't simply success habits, though. They are neurological technologies to bypass resistance. Ritual removes the need for willpower, which is a finite and exhaustible resource. Ask yourself, which important activity in your life could benefit from ritualization? What specific time and specific place could you dedicate to this activity, regardless of your emotional state or external circumstances? Strategy 4. Deliberate environmental engineering. The fourth strategy recognizes that resistance doesn't operate only within us, but is amplified or diminished by our physical and digital environment. Research in behavioral economics shows that small barriers to behavior, what psychologists call friction, have a disproportionate impact on our choices. Slightly increasing friction for unwanted behaviors and decreasing it for desired behaviors can dramatically reprogram our action patterns. Deliberate environmental engineering means consciously redesigning your physical and digital space to make important actions easier and distractions more difficult. Practical examples: sleep with your phone in another room, not beside the bed. Prepare your workspace the night before. Use blocking apps for social media during specific hours. Work in a location designated exclusively for deep work. Keep exercise equipment visible and ready to use. Adam Alter, psychologist and author of Irresistible, demonstrated in his studies that people who primarily rely on willpower to avoid distractions consistently fail, while those who modify their environment to reduce temptations have much higher success rates. Environmental engineering is not a superficial tactic. It's a deep strategic intervention that recognizes the nature of human cognition as fundamentally situated and responsive to context. Strategy 5. The public commitment technique. The fifth strategy leverages our natural aversion to inconsistency and social discomfort. When we publicly announce an intention, we create healthy pressure to follow through with it. Social psychology extensively documents the consistency effect. Once we publicly declare ourselves in favor of something, we feel strong internal motivation to act in accordance with that statement. Public commitment works on multiple levels. Creates external accountability, strengthens our identity aligned with the goal, activates social support mechanisms, increases the psychological cost of giving up. The most powerful version of this technique is having a specific accountability partner, someone with whom you communicate regularly about your progress. A study by the American Society of Training and Development found that having a specific accountability partner increases the probability of achieving a goal to 95%, compared to just 10% for those who simply decide to do something. This is not just a social strategy, it's a neurological intervention. Public commitment activates brain regions associated with social reputation and identity, providing additional motivation that is simply not available when we keep our intentions private. Strategy 6. The limit immersion technique. The sixth strategy involves creating a short but intense period of completely focused work. This technique, popularized through the Pomodoro method, 25 minutes of work followed by 5 minutes of rest, is powerfully effective against resistance. When you commit to just 25 minutes of total work, several things happen. The amygdala remains calm because the commitment is limited. The prefrontal cortex can sustain complete focus for this limited period. The urgency of the timer creates a light flow state. The certainty of an imminent break reduces the impulse to procrastinate. Neurologically, this technique exploits the fact that the brain can sustain intense focus for short periods more easily than moderate focus for long periods. It's like a sprint instead of a marathon. You can give 100% knowing that the end is clearly in sight. Try it today. Choose a task you've been putting off. Commit to working on it for just 25 minutes with total focus. No phone, no email, no distractions. After those 25 minutes, you can stop completely without guilt. Often you'll find that you want to continue beyond the planned time, but even if you stop, you will have broken the pattern of avoidance. Second strategy 7. Strategic self-compassion. The seventh strategy may seem counterintuitive, but it is supported by extensive psychological research. Deliberately practicing self-compassion overcomes resistance more effectively than harsh self-criticism. Many believe they need to be hard on themselves to move forward, that self-compassion will lead to complacency. Research shows the opposite. Severe self-criticism activates the amygdala and triggers neurological stress responses that fuel resistance. In contrast, self-compassion activates the care and affiliation system, mediated by oxytocin, which reduces stress and increases psychological resilience. People who practice self-compassion after failures are significantly more likely to try again than those who punish themselves. Kristen Neff, a pioneer in self-compassion research, defines 3 components. 1. Kindness toward oneself instead of harsh judgment. 2. Recognition of shared humanity. Everyone fails and faces challenges. 3. Mindfulness, observing difficult thoughts and emotions without completely identifying with them. When facing resistance or experiencing failure, try replacing critical internal dialogue, how lazy, incompetent, with a more compassionate one. This is difficult, and it's normal to feel resistance. What can I do to support myself now? This is not a superficial, feel-good strategy. It's a sophisticated neurobiological intervention that deactivates the neural circuits that amplify resistance. Item strategy 8. The inverted compass. The 8th and perhaps most powerful strategy completely inverts our relationship with resistance, using it as a compass. Instead of seeing resistance as an obstacle, we can recognize it as an accurate direction signal. If something provokes strong resistance, this is almost always an indicator that it is important for our growth. As Stephen Pressfield observes, resistance is directly proportional to the importance of an action to our personal evolution. This means we can deliberately use the presence of resistance as a navigation system for our lives. When in doubt about which path to follow, ask, which option generates more internal resistance? Which makes me feel more fear, more discomfort, more desire to procrastinate? This is, paradoxically, often the most important direction for your growth. Tim Ferriss, author and entrepreneur, developed a practice he calls fear setting, deliberately identifying what scares him most, and then walking directly in that direction. This strategy is not an exercise in masochism, but of self-discovery. Resistance often protects areas of unexplored potential and truths about ourselves that we have avoided facing. Your practical application, the 5-step framework. To integrate these strategies into a coherent system, I suggest the following 5-step framework. 1. Identification. Specifically name the project or change that is facing the greatest resistance now. 2. Microscopization. Reduce the first action to something so small that it would be absurd not to do it. 3. Ritualization. Establish a specific time, specific place, and specific sequence for this action, eliminating future decisions. 4. Environmental preparation. Proactively remove all environmental barriers and potential distractions. 5. Compassionate execution. Execute the microscopic action, treating yourself with gentleness during the process, and use resistance as informative feedback, not as confirmation of failure. This framework can be applied to any area of life where resistance appears: creative projects, health changes, professional ventures, relationship transformations. These strategies are not one-time solutions, but tools for continuous practice. The battle against resistance is not won once and for all, but faced again each day, with increasing skill and awareness. Like a martial artist who practices the same movement thousands of times until it becomes instinctive, we must practice these techniques until they become our natural response to resistance. The good news is that each victory over resistance not only advances the specific project, but strengthens your general ability to overcome resistance in all areas of life. It's a compound growth of inner strength. In the next and final episode of this series, We'll explore what exists beyond resistance, the extraordinary states of consciousness, creativity, and purpose that become accessible when we consistently transcend this universal force. Until then, I want to hear from you. Which of these strategies will you implement first? Share in the comments a specific commitment. What is your next microscopic step? When will you execute it? And how will you know you were successful? Your public declaration right here in the comments already begins to activate the social commitment strategy. If this content is helping you advance in important areas of your life, like it, share it with someone who needs to hear this, and subscribe for the final episode, where I'll share what exists on the other side of resistance. See you soon.